Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in a prior video we got a first look and first impression at this Holtzman's Guerrilla Survival Fireline kit. This here is a comprehensive kit, comes fully outfitted, ready to go for your outdoor wilderness survival needs. But in today's video, well, I have put the Fireline knife to some good practical field use. And I do have to say this is an awesome offering from Holtzman's Guerrilla Survival. I do very much like this. It's a great performing knife, not just the knife, but the entire kit. As you take a look at this, it does come with enough to get you a basic survival kit, kind of like the baseline to a survival kit, with your ability to start a fire pretty much from scratch as long as you take advantage of the knife to its fullest capabilities. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to take you through my field use. A number of different tasks that I put this to performed extremely well. I am very happy with the overall ergonomics, the general geometry, and the capabilities of this Fireline. Then after all the field use, we're going to come back and I'm going to give you my final thoughts. But with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now, before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Holtzman's Guerrilla Survival who did provide this for review. And so now, as we get into the Holtzman's Guerrilla Survival Fireline Bushcraft Survival Knife. Now, the first thing, this is in 1095 high carbon steel, and this is an awesome set, all things considered. So you end up with the knife, you get a nice ferro rod, a striker, and the sheath. Just a fantastic package, all things considered. But here you can see I am getting into the food prep. Now the first thing, this is a real nice size for a food prep knife. At 11.06 inches in overall length, a 6.29 inch cutting edge, this is a fantastic size for kitchen and food prep tasks. Now, if there is any one thing that my survival knives absolutely have to do, it is food prep. For me, one of the things that I enjoy the most about my survival wilderness blades, it's using them in the kitchen. I mean, let's be honest. I spend way more time surviving in the kitchen than I do out in the wilderness. So if I can't use my survival knives in the kitchen, they're not going to give me the full benefit of owning the knife in the first place. But here you can see doing a fantastic job just working on slicing the vegetables, a nice, sharp, and refined edge. If this was not sharp enough, I'd literally just be breaking the peppers apart. I mean, these do have a little bit of a crisp snap to them, but at the same time, if the knife was not sharp, the peppers would literally just break, and it's cutting through them just fine. And what I like about the Fireline knife, the fact that it has a nice pronounced tip, it does really aid in the overall capabilities while working in the kitchen. But again, as you can see, just a real nice slicing capability. And the fact that this has the scalloped handles works extremely well. I love scalloped handles for an alternate grip, and that really does come into play, and especially when using your knives for food prep tasks. And again, as you can see, just doing a real nice job here in the kitchen. Now the handle is made of a black G10, and this has real nice bright liners. I am definitely a sucker for black G10 with toxic green liners. Now these are a little more pushing towards a bright yellow, but at the same time, just a real nice look and feel, and they play very well with the black blade. Now the blade itself is somewhat coated. I'm not going to say it's a traction coating, but it does seem to be somewhat of an oxide finish, and it does actually seem to be very durable. So as long as you're careful with your knife being 1095, you take good care of it, this should not have any real issues for rust. And that's going to really come into play when you use it in the kitchen tasks. Now, I did find that for the most part, it was fairly precise, nice and balanced, and did a nice job along a wide variety of different food prep tasks. Mostly the vegetables here, but again, doing a really nice job. Good, clean cuts, and very easy to use. A nice refined edge, and just quite frankly, comfortable. This is a very comfortable knife to use, and you can see here for a prolonged period of time, nice and comfortable in the kitchen. Good control, nice balance, good sharp edge, fantastic. Now there are all sorts of different food prep tasks that you could use this for. For me, at this point, you're pretty much going to see the bulk of what I've used it for, but again, performing all of the tasks very well. I was able to control my cuts. The precise tip actually really perfect, and when you see the need to have that for things like broccoli, for example, you know, a lot of little areas you need to dig into and get into to cut it apart, it worked very well. And I'm certainly not going to say this is a chef knife by any means, but the overall blade shape, the overall size is reminiscent in some ways of what you would see out of a chef knife. Granted, the stock is thicker at 3/16 of an inch stock. It is going to be quite thick compared to a chef's knife, but at the same time, it just has some of the qualities. And so again, as you see here, using it for a multitude of different vegetables, all the way now through onions, which, if you know anything, can definitely rust and impact your blade if you're not careful. But again, no problems, working very well, nice and refined cuts, very, very nicely done. I love this knife for the food prep tasks. It absolutely performed wonderfully. But the main reason for a survival wilderness blade in the first place, for me, for the most part, a couple of different major tasks. I always use my survival knife to help me clear a campsite. When I get to a camp, usually in the mountains, I do have a lot of cleanup that needs to be made. All the little eye pokers, the things that are going to cause you to jam your eyes in the middle of the night. I like to get those out of the way. It's usually just a bunch of dead branches. But also, if I have a hammock set up, I really need to use my survival knife for those purposes. But most of all, it's starting a fire. So here you can see using the Fireline knife for its intended purpose to get a fire started, and you can see batoning really nice. Now, one thing to point out, you'll notice this is a high saber grind, so it has a very defined shoulder, which really aids in the ability to split the wood. And you can see that the flat on the primary bevel really is taking the brunt of the friction, and as soon as this knife wedges its way down to the shoulder on that saber grind, that's where the magic happens. This knife does a phenomenal job with batoning tasks. All the processing of the wood from the largest to the smallest, it really did a nice job. But when you start with those batoning tasks, the ability to wedge the wood open nicely is fantastic. And again, I have already talked about the precise tip, but that tip really does aid very, very well in the stabbing tasks. And I found that the Fireline knife did a great job for those stabbing tasks. And the fact that it has the unsharpened swedge really does aid in the ability to not only stab through the wood, but then you kind of push the wood forward and it really splits it open nicely. Now, there are a couple of considerations. Of course, with the stabbing tasks, you can use a full hammer grip, but if you're going to put your thumb over the top, this does have a little bit of a sharp lanyard hole, so you do need to be a little bit careful. It can create some hot spots. But with that full hammer grip, no problem at all in splitting down through the wood, stabbing down through the wood. It worked with ease. But you're really not going to appreciate a knife if you can't carve well with it. This is absolutely instrumental in so many different ways. The ability to start the fire, the ability to get to nice dry wood, the comfort over prolonged use is really important. And it all starts with the edge geometry, the grind angle, and the ability to find the edge quickly, easily, and effectively as you work down the wood. Now, my initial impression is the handles are a little bit square towards the top of the handle scales and where they meet up with the tang of the knife. I did make note of that in my preliminary video, and my first impression was that was going to be a little bit square. So in my opinion, That's not a bad thing if you're somebody that doesn't mind little modifications to your knives, because you could easily soften that out with just a little bit of sandpaper and a few minutes worth of work. But not too big of a deal. Getting back to work here, you'll see taking nice, healthy chunks. Again, this is going to be absolutely instrumental in my ability to start this fire. All the larger chunks here I would consider to be my kindling. So I've already processed down a whole bunch of fuel. Now I'm working on my kindling, getting everything split down nicely. Some nice, large, healthy chunks, which will really help me to sustain my fire early on. These chunks are critical. And imagine being in adverse conditions when it's wet.
Nice edge geometry. Easy to find right away.
When you're maybe in snow or rain, at that point, you really do want the ability to carve
just a little bit hot in the hand
and process a lot of wood very easily and get down to the dry wood to start and sustain your fire early on until it comes up to temperature. And again, because of the overall blade length, the grinds, the edge geometry, and the ability to find that edge, I had absolutely no problem at all leveraging this Fireline for those purposes. But what about the finer tasks? At this point, now I need to get down to my tinder. It can't be all the large chunks. You have to be able to get some really, really fine tinder to start the fire. Whether you're trying to catch it with a spark off a ferro rod, light it with a match, or any other means for that matter, even if you're getting on it with a lighter, you definitely need some nice, thin, light, and fine curls. And again, the Fireline doing a wonderful job. Now, keep in mind the fact that this is in the 6-inch blade size class. They do make a shorter model if you want something more closer to a 4-inch, 4.5-inch knife. But for me, the 6-inch blade size class is king for this exact purpose, for the firecraft purposes, and your ability to have a nice, easy to use, efficient, and properly sized knife. This is just about right. Now, for me, too, personally, sometimes I do like a finger choil on a knife of this size. Of course, that's going to reduce the overall cutting edge, but I didn't need it with the Fireline. I found that this was nice with the full-length cutting edge. Now, fat wood for me is something that I always do try to leverage for a number of reasons. The ease of catching a spark, first and foremost, and the ability to help sustain my fire early on while I'm getting it started. But fat wood can be really funny with knives and the way the knives behave. All knives behave differently on different woods, and that's especially true with fat wood. It can be really problematic even for really nice quality knives, but the Fireline doing a great job carving down through the fat wood with ease. And what about the spine? Well, for me, my survival wilderness blades absolutely have to have the ability to scrape, especially to get some fuzz off of the wood to start my fire. And in this case, I found that the spine is not as squared off as I personally would like, but again, you can do some of these tasks, and furthermore, the set does come with a dedicated scraper. So the fact that you can do some of these tasks is not a bad thing, and the fact that if you really wanted to, you could square that spine off on a belt sander or something like that. But again, the kit comes fully outfitted with a ferro rod and with a dedicated striker. So here in this particular case, you can see I am getting on the ferro rod with the spine of the knife. Not incredibly effective, but the dedicated striker absolutely showering sparks. And I was even able to use it to get me some of that well-needed fluff off of my fat wood. So again, scraping down here, getting my little nest ready, everything I need from my tinder to my kindling, all ready to go, and my fuel off to the side. It's time to rip this fire and get it started. And the ferro rod worked very well. The striker worked very well. The knife worked very well. Everything about this Holtzman's Gorilla Survival Fireline kit, extremely, extremely effective. And well, here's another great reason to like a slightly longer blade. the ability to now manage my fire on top of everything else. So it's not just about getting it started, it's not just about processing it down, it's about managing your fire and having a quality and really easy to use and trustworthy tool while you're out in your camping situation. Just a couple of last fine details. You do end up with an exposed pommel. It's got a little bit of an angle on it so you can do some crushing tasks. Here you can see I do have a bit of a fire starter that I'm trying to get crushed up just to test it. And again, no problem. The ferro rod and the scraper working very well. So depending on what type of tinder source you have, you can approach it a number of different ways. So my final thoughts with the Fireline, absolutely awesome. I can say not only do I very much like this, I can say I can definitely recommend it. And so, all right, guys, there you have it. A look at the Holtzman's Gorilla Survival Fireline. Again, a very nice knife. I really do like it. It fits well for my needs, fits well for my style, and is pretty reasonable, all things considered, when it comes down to the budget. Very nice materials. I am a big fan of 1095. I've never had a problem with it, and Holtzman's Gorilla Survival seemingly doing a nice job. The coating, actually very reasonable. It's held up pretty well, all things considered, and I love the fact that it's not a true traction coating. So you get the benefit of the fact that it's kind of oxidized, gives you some corrosion resistance, yet at the same time doesn't create any drag or friction through the work. And the grind, just about perfect, being that sort of mid to high saber grind, fantastic. So the geometry overall there. The handle, pretty good. I do have to say, it fits my hands fairly well. I could see some people with bigger mitts maybe struggling just a little bit, but there's plenty of handle there, and it actually flares out very well to fill out my palms. A little bit square, if there was one thing, just a little bit square up towards the edge of the actual scales towards the tang, but not a big deal. And the only other thing would be, I do personally, for a knife of this size, tend to want to go to a finger choil, but the fact that it's a full-length cutting edge, no problem at all. I just think having two versions and one with a finger choil might be nice. But again, I'm not going to quibble over that. Doesn't bother me at all. Definitely a great performer, nice edge geometry. And after all of that work, a very serviceable edge. That's the other thing. A real simple pass on a leather strop and then a fine ceramic rod. And this is going right back to razor sharp. So good from the overall edge retention, but also the field serviceable capabilities. The sheath, very nicely done. I have enjoyed this. It works extremely well. Very simple. And the fact that it has the secondary retention, I do like that. You don't need it for this particular package, but it's there if you want it. And especially if you were going to carry this inverted on your shoulder, on like a knife pack or something like that, having a little extra retention is a good thing, and I would use it for that reason. The ferro rod and scraper, definitely doable. Now, you saw that I did struggle just a little bit to get some sparks with the knife spine. Not a big deal. This does come with the scraper as well and is definitely effective. This has a few different square surfaces, and I did find that when I used this at the side and really struck down, it did the best job overall. So, pretty comfortable, very serviceable. The ability to put this to good use, no problem. And the fact that this all sort of nests together, I love it. Having that bungee cord on there is just critical to making sure that this cannot fall out. And then such a genius little idea, the ability just to pop that scraper in there. Just awesome. So the Fireline package, all in, I am definitely impressed. And so again, to the people at Holtzman's Gorilla Survival, I would like to say thank you very much for providing this for review. And for the rest of you, if you like this content, do me a favor, take a look at my Outer Limitless 2 channel, which is more on the tactical and firearm side of things. At this point, that channel is growing quickly. I have a ton of videos up there, so if you like what you see here on Outer Limitless, do me a favor and check me out on Outer Limitless 2. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.